In 2012's Oscar-winning documentary Searching for Sugar Man, the impact of Rodriguez's album Cold Fact had on African protesters of the African apartheid were apparent. His music made the African people realize they didn't have to conform, but could fight for their freedom. But what exactly was the African apartheid? For that, we have to go back to the beginning. Oh, that's too far. There we go. This is mid-17th century Africa. The Khoi and San people were driven out of their lands by the Netherlands, who turned anyone who looked different from them into slaves. Fast forward to 1806 and the takeover of Cape Peninsula by the British. In 1834, the British decide slavery is bad and abolishes it. Everyone rejoices. However, the white British people in charge still believe black people are lesser than and segregate white people from black people. In 1939, World War II begins. Over 200,000 white males set off for Europe to fight the Nazis, and leaving many of their workforce needing people to keep their economy running. This is when black South African people were given a chance to work. However, black people are underpaid for higher skilled jobs and required to carry proper documentation before entering any cities. A practical system was proposed in which a complete separation of races would be implemented. These new laws made it illegal for mixed-race marriages, Indian people were sent back to India, and black Africans would be sent to reserved lands. In 1948, this all came into law and the African apartheid began. Apartheid is an African word meaning separateness. These petty apartheid laws restricted every aspect of black life in South Africa. Black people living amidst the African apartheid were unable to receive proper education, and were segregated even if they were to seek medical treatment at a hospital. Black people and those against the African apartheid had finally had enough, and peaceful protests throughout the country began. One of those protests took place in Sharpeville in 1960. The demonstration quickly turned deadly. Police opened fire on the crowd, and 69 peaceful protesters were killed, sparking nationwide outrage and causing a state of emergency. Following this tragic event, the ANC, standing for the African National Congress, was formed. This was a group that was fed up with the ineffectiveness of their peaceful protests and instead adopted armed resistance. Among that group was a young Nelson Mandela.
We have made it very clear in our policy that South Africa is a country of many races. There is room for all the various races in this country.
Who was arrested and charged with treason in 1961. June 16, 1976 was another important day during the African apartheid. 10,000 black school children marched to protest the segregation of schools. Police responded by massacring over 100 protesters. The Black African movement only grew stronger and angrier. In the 1980s, Nelson Mandela became the most powerful face of the anti-apartheid movement and continued to inspire from inside his prison cell. This is when the rest of the world began to take notice. International business, celebrities, and other world governments pressured an end to the African apartheid and began enforcing sanctions on South Africa.
Hollywood stars marched alongside political activists today in a protest march calling for an end to the ties between the United States and South Africa.
I'm also at this moment recalling history. A small handful of people first marched on what seemed like a long, lonely path in the search for civil rights in this country.
A new president took power in 1989 by the name of F.W. de Klerk. He decided enough was enough. It was time to negotiate an end to the apartheid. Only 1 year later, the ban on the ANC was lifted, and Nelson Mandela, as well as many other members of opposition groups, were released from prison.
I am now in a position to announce that Mr. Nelson Mandela will be released at the Victor Verster prison on Sunday, the 11th of February, at about 3 p.m.
Just 4 years later, Nelson Mandela went from behind prison bars to the new president of South Africa.
The sun shall never set on so glorious a human achievement. Let freedom reign. God bless Africa. I thank you.
In 1997, South Africa adopted a new constitution and were no longer ruled by racial discrimination. Despite this deal being made to end the African apartheid, it was nothing more but a means to an end. Civil rights and democracy were granted to black Africans, but not an equal opportunity for economics and wealth. Unfortunately, the effects of the African apartheid are still felt today. Over 2 decades later, the sense of separation within South Africa is still apparent. White Africans live in the rich suburbs of Johannesburg, while black Africans are forced to live in low-income housings because of limited opportunities. The country may still be a divided mess, but at least there is now an opportunity to clean it up.
After nearly 90 years of life, it is time for new heads to lift the burdens. It is in your hands now